Jack Nicklaus rarely speaks out of turn. When the greatest player in golf history decides to break his silence, the entire sport stops to listen. Right now, he is aiming his frustration directly at the new corporate leadership of the PGA Tour. The Golden Bear sees a massive flaw in the current direction, and he is no longer willing to just watch from the gallery. Current tour leadership is pushing a bold new vision for the weekly schedule. Executives believe this new math will save the product and please the broadcasters. Jack completely disagrees. He knows that treating historic tournaments like disposable assets will eventually break the game from the inside out. For decades, the sport relied on a steady rhythm to keep fans and players happy. Now, the leadership wants to compress everything into a tight, high-stakes window. They think this creates must-see television. Jack knows it actually creates burnout and starves the smaller events that give players their start. The gap between the elite and the rest is growing wider every single week. This is not just a simple disagreement over tee times or travel routes. It is a fundamental clash over who actually controls the future of professional golf. The players are feeling the squeeze, the historic tournaments are losing their prestige, and the fans are starting to notice the cracks. He decided to step up to the microphone and deliver a public warning. This single move left the new CEO with absolutely nowhere to hide. I think this new schedule ruins the history of the game, but do you agree? Drop your thoughts below and subscribe for more unfiltered golf news. Brian Rolapp is the executive facing this public backlash. He was brought in to fix the financial struggles of the game. His solution is a highly compressed schedule packed with elite tournaments. The math on paper looks perfect for television networks. They get the biggest stars playing against each other almost every single week. Network executives want guaranteed ratings and the biggest names on the screen every Sunday. Rolapp looked at the old calendar and saw wasted time. He decided to eliminate that wasted time. The new blueprint groups the biggest tournaments together to create a continuous loop of high-stakes golf. The corporate office believes this will maximize every single dollar of sponsorship money. But this entire plan was built in a boardroom by people who look at spreadsheets, not scorecards. They completely ignored the actual reality of playing professional golf at the highest level. This brutal new format guarantees one specific outcome. It will completely starve the historic events that actually built this sport. Corporate logic completely ignores the physical reality of the golf course. Players need time to recover, practice, and travel. Bunching 4 or 5 massive events together creates a physical nightmare. The top guys might survive the initial grind, but the rest of the field will be completely exhausted before the season even reaches its peak. Think about the travel schedule. The new plan requires players to fly across the country multiple times in a single month. They land on Monday, play a Pro-Am on Wednesday, and tee off on Thursday. There is zero time to adjust to the time zone or rest a sore back. The physical toll is massive. Practice time completely vanished under this new system. Professional golf requires endless hours on the practice range to work on swings and read greens. When you compress the schedule, you eliminate the practice days. Players are forced to show up and just play. This leads to higher scores, worse golf, and a slow fade of the magic we all love to watch. The physical exhaustion was bad enough, but the mental toll was about to destroy the quality of the actual golf. The local tournament hosts feel the pressure first. These people spend months organizing charity events and rely on star players to sell tickets. Now, they are looking at a calendar that makes their work look irrelevant. Take a historic event in Florida, for example. This tournament has been running for decades and raises millions for local charities. Under the new schedule, this event is sandwiched between massive elite tournaments. The top players will simply skip it and use the week to rest. The Florida tournament will be left with a weak field, fans will stop buying tickets, and the local sponsors will pull their money. The event will slowly die. This is not just a business loss. It is a loss for the local community and the volunteers who give their time. The corporate office is sacrificing these community pillars for a few extra television ratings. Behind the scenes, the locker room was fracturing into 2 completely different worlds. The younger players see the massive payouts and want the fast track to the top, but the veterans know the truth. They know that a compressed schedule is a trap, where one bad week means your season is over. The mid-tier players are in absolute panic mode. These are the guys ranked between 50 and 100 in the world. They rely on the spread-out schedule to make cuts and earn a living. When the schedule compresses, They are thrown directly against the top 20 players every single week. They will miss the cut, lose their sponsor bonuses, and struggle to pay their caddies. Sitting in the private meetings, one veteran player finally decided he had seen enough. He looked at the spreadsheets and told the executives that the math was flawed. He warned them that you cannot treat the players like machines. The executives just smiled and nodded because the television deals were already signed. The veteran player realized that polite warnings were not going to work. He needed someone whose name carries more weight than the entire board of directors. Picking up the phone, he dialed a very specific number. The conversation that followed would change the entire trajectory of the season. Jack Nicklaus has always protected the roots of the game. He understands that golf is not just about the players at the very top. It is about the entire ecosystem. The local charities, the volunteers, the caddies, and the mid-tier professionals all rely on a balanced schedule. Jack listened to the veteran player on the phone and heard the deep frustration in his voice. He already knew the details of the new schedule because he had seen the leaked documents. He knew the leadership was planning to bunch the biggest events together to maximize television ratings, and he knew this would destroy the smaller, historic tournaments. This was not just a business decision to Jack. It was a personal insult. He hosts one of the most prestigious events in the world at Muirfield Village and knows exactly how much work goes into running a tour event. To see the leadership treat these events like disposable numbers was unacceptable. He told the veteran player that he would handle it behind closed doors, but he was completely wrong about the leadership's willingness to listen. The closed-door meetings failed to produce any results. The leadership refused to change the calendar, leaving Jack with only one option. Weeks passed, and the new schedule was officially announced to a miserable locker room. Jack watched the historic events losing their status and the mid-tier players struggling to make a living. He realized that polite phone calls were not going to work because the corporate office only cared about leverage. He needed to use his ultimate leverage and speak to the entire golf world. He decided to wait for his own tournament at Muirfield Village to deliver his message. The media knew he was angry, but nobody expected the sheer brutality of his public attack. Jack walked up to the podium for his traditional pre-tournament press conference. He looked out at the sea of reporters, adjusted the microphone, and did not smile. The room went completely quiet because everyone knew something big was about to happen. A reporter asked a simple question about the upcoming season, but Jack did not give a simple answer. He leaned into the microphone and delivered a message that instantly sent shockwaves through the entire golf world. Jack stated clearly that he was not exactly in favor of what the tour was doing right now. He did not use polite corporate language or say he just had concerns. He said he was not in favor, which was a direct, public rejection of the new schedule. The reporters started typing furiously because the story was breaking right in front of them. He explained that he hated to see tournaments bunched too much together and warned that this was going to be a massive problem for the tour in the future. He was not just complaining, he was predicting the exact collapse of the current system. Then, he dropped the hammer by specifically calling out the fate of the smaller events. He used the Florida tournament as his main example and asked a very simple, very damaging question. He looked directly at the cameras and asked what chance that specific tournament actually had of surviving this new corporate math. He made it clear that the leadership was sacrificing the history of the game for a few extra television ratings. Jack said he wanted to sit down with Brian Rolapp and Monahan to have a real conversation about this mess. He made it clear that he was not just speaking for himself. He was speaking for the tournament hosts, the mid-tier players, and the fans who actually care about the history of the sport. He was drawing a line in the sand, and he was daring the corporate office to cross it. The demand for a sit-down meeting was not a request. It was a direct order from the most powerful man in golf. The immediate reaction inside the corporate office was pure chaos. Brian Rolapp suddenly found himself in the spotlight for all the wrong reasons, being publicly shamed by the greatest player in history. His public relations team went into emergency mode to spin the story, but the golf world knew better. The narrative was completely out of their control. Monahan was caught in the middle. He had to support his new CEO, but he also had to respect Jack Nicklaus. The commissioner looked weak and like he had lost control of his own tour. The players in the locker room were watching this happen in real time. They realized that Jack was actually fighting for them. The media coverage was massive, and the narrative completely shifted to the Golden Bear fighting the soulless corporate machine. The mid-tier players finally had a champion who was publicly validating their exact struggles. A coalition of younger players realized they had actual power because the leadership could not just ignore Jack Nicklaus. Brian Rolapp had to issue a weak, empty public statement. But Jack was not satisfied. He wanted the actual meeting to look the new CEO in the eye. The closed-door session at the corporate headquarters was incredibly tense. Jack sat down at the table, opened his folder, and prepared to dismantle the new schedule piece by piece, using pure, undeniable logic. By the end of the meeting, the leadership had no choice but to admit defeat. The schedule was going to change. They agreed to review the compressed dates and give the smaller tournaments more breathing room. They agreed to listen to the players about the travel schedule and fix the physical nightmare. It was a massive victory for Jack and the mid-tier players. The corporate machine had finally been stopped by the Golden Bear. The news leaked out to the media very quickly, and the players were thrilled. The tournament hosts were relieved, and the fans were happy. Jack Nicklaus had once again protected the game he loved. He had proven that tradition and logic could still beat corporate greed. The entire golf world let out a massive sigh of relief. The nightmare of the compressed schedule was finally coming to an end. Brian Rolapp learned a very hard lesson about understanding the heart of the game and respecting the people who built it. Jack Nicklaus made sure he would never forget that lesson. The Golden Bear walked out of the headquarters knowing he had secured the future of the sport he loves. This entire situation proves why Jack Nicklaus is the most important figure in golf. He does not care about the money or the corporate politics. He only cares about the fans, the players, and the history. Jack Nicklaus publicly shaming Brian Rolapp was a necessary correction and a reminder that the soul of the game cannot be sold for a few extra ratings. The future of the PGA Tour is still complicated, but the players now know they have a protector. The game of golf is safe for now, the historic tournaments will survive, and the schedule will make sense again. All because one man refused to stay quiet and decided to speak his mind. If you believe Jack Nicklaus saved the soul of professional golf, drop a like on this video. Make sure to subscribe so you never miss a moment of the real PGA Tour news. The fans are the ones who ultimately pay the price for these corporate mistakes. They buy the expensive tickets, they travel across the country, and they spend their Sundays watching their favorite players. When the schedule is compressed and the top players are exhausted, the fans get a worse product. They see missed putts, they see tired swings, and they see a lack of passion. The casual fan might not notice the difference right away, but the die-hard fan sees the cracks immediately. They remember when golf was about the long season, the grueling travel, and the triumph of surviving all year to reach the Tour Championship. That narrative is gone when you compress everything into a few short months. The history of the game is built on these long, grueling seasons. You cannot just erase decades of tradition because a television executive wants a better ratings quarter. Jack Nicklaus understands this better than anyone. He knows that the fans do not just tune in for the money. They tune in for the drama, the history, and the sheer athletic brilliance of the players. When you take away the time to recover, you take away the brilliance. You turn artists into factory workers. The leadership forgot that golf is an art form, not an assembly line. The leadership forgot that golf is an art form, not an assembly line. And the fans were ready to revolt. Thank you for watching this deep dive into the biggest story in golf right now. Keep supporting the game you love, and keep respecting the history. We will see you on the next tee box. The battle for the soul of the PGA Tour is far from over. There will always be new executives with new ideas and new spreadsheets. There will always be a push for more money and more television time. But now, the players and the fans know that they have a guardian. They know that when the corporate office goes too far, Jack Nicklaus will step up to the microphone and tell the truth. The Golden Bear has set a precedent. He has shown that tradition can still win if you are willing to fight for it. The historic tournaments will survive, the mid-tier players will get their chance to compete, and the schedule will finally make sense again. It all happened because one man refused to stay quiet. The game of golf is safe for now, but the vigilance must continue. Every fan, every player, and every volunteer needs to remember this moment. They need to remember that the sport they love was almost sold out for a quick profit. Jack Nicklaus stopped that from happening. He protected the legacy of the game for the next generation of players who are just picking up a club for the first time. They deserve a fair schedule, they deserve a chance to compete, and they deserve to play on a tour that respects their physical and mental health. The Golden Bear made sure they get exactly that.